there's one thing we definitely don't seem to have a shortage of these days, it's remasters, remakes, and re-releases. Every other week it seems some game or another is getting some sort of update, and if anything, this trend is seemingly just becoming more and more prevalent. I suppose there's not really any problem with this in and of itself. I mean, even I can get rather hyped for some of these things, but sometimes it feels like it's not really the most worthy candidates that actually receive this kind of treatment. Just look at how many versions there are of The Last of Us at this point. It's just ludicrous. Still, when they're done right, these updates can most certainly be very welcomed, as they can breathe new life into forgotten classics or improve on good ideas with less than excellent executions. In addition, there are plenty of amazing games still stuck on legacy systems, meaning a large portion of the gaming community will never get to experience them without some sort of re-release. And no, they can't necessarily just emulate them. That's not a universal solution. In any case, there are still plenty of games and franchises that could absolutely benefit from some kind of update, and in some cases, I would argue it's a borderline crime that they still haven't received them. With that in mind, I thought I'd kick off this new year-ish by going over a few titles that it would not only be nice to see new versions of, but that all desperately need them. In my opinion, and to slightly varying degrees. Hi, I'm AtticLoaf, and these are my top 10 games that need new versions. Number 10. The original Killzone trilogy. Let's kick things off nice and easy with a series that I'll freely admit I'm not exactly the biggest fan of. Oh, I like them, why else would I put them on this list, but I'd manage if they never came back. I guess. That said, it is still a bit odd that Sony and or Guerrilla aren't doing more with these games. If you don't know, Killzone was basically the first breakout hit from Guerrilla Games, the developers of the Horizon series. From what I remember, Killzone got just as much praise as Horizon, if not more so, as it was pretty much universally acclaimed. Not only was the FPS gameplay all but flawless, but the story was excellent, and the graphics... oh, the graphics! Seriously, these games looked so good that no one even questioned that the Killzone 2 trailer was complete BS until well after it was first shown. It was just that believable that the final game would actually end up looking like that. Unfortunately, the only Killzone games available these days are the less than stellar Shadowfall for the PS4 and the PSP spin-off called Liberation. If you want to play the original trilogy, you have to find and hook up a PS3, so yeah, a remaster collection sure would be nice, Sony. Hell, you could even do what you've done with God of War, Horizon and The Last of Us and bring them over to PC as well, maybe with cross-platform multiplayer, and I truly think you'd have a pretty big hit. At the very least, this franchise certainly deserves far better than to be some forgotten relic from the PS2 and 3 era, so yeah, I think it's well past time for the Helghast to return. Number 9. The Final Fantasy XIII trilogy. Yeah, a bit of a controversial one here probably, but just bear with me for a sec. No, this is not generally considered a great trilogy, maybe not even a good one depending on who you ask, but come on, it's Final Fantasy! It just has to be preserved! Oh, I have my problems with these games as well. They are extremely flawed in many, many ways, but there's still something inexplicably intriguing about them. They certainly look unbelievably good, the music is as excellent as ever, and there is something rather mesmerizing and mysterious about this universe. Really, the main problem is just that they're not that great as far as Final Fantasy, RPGs, or, well, games in general are concerned. Still, even bad games have their place, and to me, these games are a prime example. Sure, there are better games, more deserving games and all the rest of it, but this is a piece of history I still think deserves to be remembered and experienced. After all, if we can bring back Night Trap, Bubsy, and freaking Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, I'm fairly certain this Final Fantasy trilogy is worthy of some love as well. It will certainly be far, far worse if we ever allowed this historic blunder to be completely forgotten. That would be an absolute crime. Number 8. The Half-Life series. I know, you technically can play all of these games on PC, but even there, it's not necessarily without issues, and what's so wrong about wanting some proper console ports of what many say is one of, if not the greatest video game series ever? Seriously, shouldn't everyone get a chance to experience this franchise if it really is that good? Also, just to be clear, I'm not talking about just getting one or two of these games either. I want the entire series with all expansions and sequels. In fact, what I would really like is essentially something like an Orange Box 2. Just think about it, that package is still one of the greatest gaming deals ever created, so just imagine if they actually gave us a follow-up featuring the entire Half-Life franchise, maybe the Portal games and, dare I dream, Half-Life 3? Okay, maybe that last one's a bit of a reach, but my point still stands. Honestly, it's kind of insane that a franchise so acclaimed and beloved is still mostly locked to PC, and that we haven't seen any sort of console port or remaster since the original Orange Box. It may be highly unlikely, but yeah, this just needs to happen. Like right now. Number 7. Broken Sword, The Sleeping Dragon, and Angel of Death. There actually have been a few remasters and reforgings of parts of this franchise already, but why stop there? Why not fill in the blanks and just give us new versions of these two titles as well? I mean, it's not like they aren't worthy. Far from it. I especially think Sleeping Dragon deserves a bit more love, as it's not only just about as good as his predecessors, it's actually the first Broken Sword game I ever played. That's right, I didn't play Shadow of the Templars or Smoking Mirrors until after I played this third entry, which I admit probably taints my opinion a bit, but I genuinely think it's more than on par with the originals. I may not be as fond of Angel of Death, or Secrets of the Ark as it's also known, but at least from what I can remember, it's still a pretty excellent addition to the series. Sure, both it and Sleeping Dragon may have been a teeny bit clunkier than the first two, what with it being aimed a bit more towards consoles and whatnot, but this entire franchise is just so good, and considering we already have updated versions of the originals, I don't see why you couldn't tackle these two next. It really is kind of a no-brainer. Number 6. The PS2 and PS3 Ratchet and Clank games. That's right, this series is still not available on PS5. Hell, they never even did a PS4 collection. True, we did get 2 new entries for both the PS4 and 5, which are apparently both pretty good, but as for all the other games leading up to those, there's just nothing.
0 divided by 0, zip, nada, bupkis.
Bupkis, huh? What does bupkis mean?
Well, okay, so they did port 2 games, Size Matters and Secret Agent Clank, and as we all know, those are the 2 most important ones, but I still think it would be nice to get just a few more. As a matter of fact, I want a complete franchise collection of not just the PS2 or PS3 games, but of every single one of them. Even All for One and Full Frontal Assault. I know, I'm insane. In all seriousness though, it is a bit sad that not a single one of these amazing games has made the leap from the PS3. Fair enough, some of them did make the leap from the PS2 to the PS3, but that's still a bit too short. Bottom line, we need these games to return, and if we can't get all of them, at least give us the original and so-called future trilogy. I honestly don't think that's too much to ask. Number 5. Heavenly Sword and Enslaved Odyssey to the West. You know, I absolutely love Ninja Theory, but I have to admit, they're not quite what they once were. Oh, I liked the first Hellblade, and I haven't actually played the sequel yet, so that might be excellent too, but I just don't think they can ever really top their very first outings. Sure, Heavenly Sword is a little rough around the edges, and relegating quite a significant portion of the lore to a series of animated prequel shorts was a bit odd, but it was still amazingly told and acted, and its slight clunkiness only lends itself all the better to a potential remaster or remake. As for Enslaved, that is simply a sadly neglected masterpiece. No, it's not entirely perfect, but it's just such an amazingly fun and amazingly gripping tale, told so amazingly that I genuinely think it needs to be updated and preserved for everyone's continual amazement. I'm just amazed that hasn't happened already. In all seriousness, keeping these gems locked away on the PS3 and 360 respectively is an absolute insult. Okay, so Enslaved can be played on the series of Xboxes through backwards compatibility, but it's still the 360 version being played. Yeah, slightly better than nothing, but Heavenly Sword is still left to rot, and besides, both these games deserve so much more love and attention. Please don't let these games die, and just give us the Ninja Theory Origins collection we all know we most definitely want and need. Number 4. Second Sight. Who here remembers Timesplitters, the console FPS series by Free Radical Design? Well, did you know that those developers also made a semi-psychological sci-fi thriller action-adventure game, and that said game was insanely good? No, didn't think so. Fine, I suppose some people must know about this cult classic, as that is more or less what it's become, but it definitely doesn't get anywhere near the recognition or attention it so richly deserves. As it happens though, I can't really say too much about the game itself without the risk of spoiling the surprise as it were, but let's just say it's not just good mechanically, it's also insanely clever and pretty dang unique. Honestly, it's an experience I don't think it's possible to ever forget. Unfortunately, most people never got around to experiencing it in the first place, and these days, it's really only available via Steam. Good for PC gamers, sure, but this really does belong on consoles, and a few tweaks and updates probably wouldn't be a bad thing either. At the very least, something has to be done here, as allowing this true work of art to just fade away wouldn't just be a shame, it would be absolutely tragic. Trust me, we absolutely need to keep this one alive. Number 3. Infamous. What happened to this franchise? No really, why did it seemingly just suddenly disappear? Granted, they didn't exactly come out every year or anything, and I know Sucker Punch sort of moved on to Ghost of Tsushima / Yotei or whatever, but ever since the latest game released all the way back in 2014, nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, has been done with this franchise. At all! Maybe it was just time to move on or something though. Maybe there just wasn't any more steam left in this particular pipe, as it were. But even if that was the case, why not at least remaster and re-release the original PS3 games that started it all? That way we could at least experience and enjoy the entire franchise on one system, not to mention that the oft-overlooked Festival of Blood could finally receive that much-needed physical release it so desperately needs. Ultimately, it's just not right to leave this absolute banger of a franchise to fade away into obscurity. Sure, it might be preferable to get a new entry instead, but I am pretty certain I'm far from the only one who would just love to see Cole McGrath make some form of triumphant return. Just ask this guy.
He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous!
Number 2. The Mistwalker Trilogy. Alright, so there's not actually a Mistwalker trilogy as such, but that's what I've decided to call the relatively obscure little gems known as Blue Dragon, Lost Odyssey, and The Last Story, respectively. After all, they are essentially the origins of the company that was formed when Final Fantasy parted ways with its original creator, Hironobu Sakaguchi. That's right, Sakaguchi himself worked on these games, which is probably why they often feel like a truer continuation of the Final Fantasy franchise than the actual Final Fantasy games themselves. Lost Odyssey in particular is pretty much exactly what that franchise seemed to be missing at the time, and while Blue Dragon and The Last Story may not have been as great, they're both still worth a second and probably even third look if you ask me. I mean, we are talking Sakaguchi here. How bad could they really be? Regardless, I just think these games deserve far more recognition than they've gotten so far, and no, making 2 of them playable via Series X backwards compatibility simply isn't good enough, especially not for the still Wii exclusive Last Story. Considering how Xbox seems more interested in putting their games on every other system than their own these days though, there might actually be a tiny ray of hope that at least 1 or 2, if not all 3 of these gems will finally be made available to a slightly wider audience.
When pigs fly.
That's a good one.
Now, before we get to my number 1 pick, I just wanted to bring up a few honourable mentions as well. These aren't necessarily less worthy than the numbered choices, but for one reason or another, they just didn't quite make the final cut, as it were. I still think they're worth bringing up though, so here we go. Light gun games. Some of these are coming back in limited forms, and the Sinden light gun does exist, but it would just be so awesome to see these things return in a truer, more mainstream way. Sure, there is a technological barrier, but come on, the industry must be able to figure that one out by now. Fallout 1, 2, and Tactics. With talks of Fallout 3 and or New Vegas remakes on the horizon, I say it's high time we give the original Fallout games a bit of an overhaul. I actually haven't played them though, so maybe I wouldn't even like them, but I honestly find the top-down point-and-click style way more interesting and appealing than the more modern games anyway. Eternal Darkness. One of the best, most unique horror games ever made, and it's still stuck on the GameCube. Yeah, it could make its way to NSO or some such, maybe, but let's face it, a full remaster or remake, preferably to more than just a Switch, would be far better. Insanely unlikely, but definitely better, yeah. The Drakengard games. Massively flawed, but incredibly ingenious and strangely endearing, these cult classics could make for some truly spectacular remasters or remakes. There is a chance that improving them too much might ruin some of their unique charm though, so maybe just some straight ports would be the better option here. Maybe. Snatcher. Fairly self-explanatory in my opinion. An early Hideo Kojima sci-fi epic in the vein of Blade Runner that only received 1 officially translated release on the Sega CD and has since become exceedingly rare and ruinously expensive? Yeah, seems like a prime candidate for a remaster as far as I'm concerned. Obviously never got around to actually playing it though, so still a bit of a risk, but the historical value alone still make it an absolute no-brainer. With that out of the way, let's get back to the actual list and finish up with number 1, Chrono Trigger. How has this not happened yet? Everywhere I turn, pretty much everyone always raves about how this is one of, if not the greatest RPG ever made, and yet it's still not that widely available. Certainly not in Europe. Oh, you can get it, but there always seems to be at least some caveat or another. There really isn't one generally recommended version. It's not like people haven't expressed their desire for a new version either. When the Radical Dreamers edition of the sequel, Chrono Cross, was released, I remember seeing so many people hoping and wishing that they would just do something similar with the original. After all, there is still not a single console version of this game available anywhere in Europe, as the closest thing we ever got was the DS and Wii Virtual Console releases, neither of which are anywhere near good enough. They didn't even include it on the SNES Mini. How is that even possible? Yeah, I know, it is available on Steam and mobile, and apparently the DS version is actually pretty excellent if you can find it, but come on, this game should be available absolutely everywhere. Kinda like the pixel remasters of the early Final Fantasy games. I mean, why the hell not? Come to think of it, that's exactly what we should get. A definite pixel remaster type edition with every edition ever added in one ultimate package. I wouldn't be opposed to a potential HD 2D remake or some such either, but at the very least, just give us European console plebs some way to enjoy some version of this absolute masterpiece. This simply needs to happen, and it's an absolute embarrassment that it hasn't already. Seriously, Squenix, just do it. Now!
What are you waiting for? Do it!
And those are my choices, but what do you think? Will we ever see any of these games make some sort of return? Would you want them to? What other games, if any, would you like to see redone or ported in some way? Let me know in a comment below, as I'm sure there are plenty of choices I haven't even considered. As impossible as that may sound. Either way, thanks for watching, and remember, bye!